I'm Neil Marshall. I made a decision to offer myself as a candidate in this election because I recognize that the current administration, one, had not a clue of what was going on. They had no plan, and that manifested itself not only in the leadership but also in terms of the type of representation that we have here in St. Philip South. And I don't think that a year on that my initial views and opinion have changed. In fact, it's been reinforced. Given my fairly broad experience in terms of business, initially out of school, working in the fields of education, where I lectured as a part-time lecturer and at University of West Indies and tutored at the Barbados Community College in the areas of politics and government and governance and so on. And more recently, my switch in careers to that of law, where I now have a private practice. And of course, prior to that, I worked within the last administration as a personal assistant. So I got a very good insight into how government work as a practical entity, how it ought to work as a theoretical perspective from my own teachings and so on. I came to the view that I believe that I can do a much better job than what is currently being done at the moment, and not only at the parochial level here in St. Philip South, but of course nationally. I do think that I have something to offer, and I'm prepared to offer that to the people of St. Philip South and the people of Barbados. Let me say first and foremost that the reception has not been muted. Persons in this particular district of Ruby and Union Hall is merely a reflection of what a large number of Barbadians, and I'm prepared to say a majority of Barbadians, are feeling. And that is that the government, not that it has lost its way, is that it never had a way. We are now seeing the ramifications of that exercise that they undertook, and that no amount of fancy talk and pretty speeches at the end of the day will solve the very basic bread and butter issues that confront persons in Ruby Park and Union Hall, which is for all intents and purposes a middle class neighborhood, but they very much mirror those that we will find in the lower income neighborhoods such as Work Hall and Seaview and Headings and Curtains and so on. And those issues of course remain to the very high level of inflation, the poor services provided by the government, the excessive levels of taxation, particularly where persons cannot see or even identify the purpose to which those taxes are being applied. Of course, there is the burning issue of education of our most vulnerable, the children, and how the government has not yet seemed to have had or get their fingers on the pulse of what really ought to be done to alleviate those sort of issues. Of course, very much on the forefront of persons are the issues, and have always been, the issue of corruption and transparency and accountability. And much a song and dance have been made on that particular point. They are not satisfied. In fact, they are convinced that that particular agenda, speaking of transparency and accountability, that the government has been found most wanting in that particular area. Another very burning point with people in this constituency as a whole is the manner in which the COVID protocols are being applied, and there seems to be a different, special and differential treatment for certain categories of persons, and a different treatment of course for others. And those persons who are being most disadvantaged are of course our small shopkeepers and small entrepreneurs. And indeed many of them have expressed a concern that they still are waiting to be offered some sort of gratuitous compensation by the government that was promised during the last lockdown, but which has not been forthcoming. And of course, they become even more incensed when they recognize that their own dollars, as meager as they are, paid in taxes, are being used to support big businesses, which through their very history and their market share and so on, ought to have been able to play a bigger role in taking care of themselves. But at the end of the day, it is often left to the Democratic Labour Party to take care of the small, the weak and the vulnerable. And that is what we intend to do, not only in St. Philip South, but throughout the entire of Barbados.